Wallace here, hooked on sport. We've been at the Australian Open for the past 4 days. Going to do a recap. I couldn't find Sophie, but look who I found. Ben Hook. G'day, Hookie.
Yeah, nice to just come in off the bench in my own podcast as very much the third wheel. I feel a little bit like Nathan Lyon, just continually getting dropped and just only getting picked when no one else is available. So, firstly, you and Sophie did an incredible job over the first 3 days of the tournament. It's wonderful to get an opportunity to be a part of the recap. Just tell me, as a first-timer, essentially, what did you make of it all?
It was sensational. I'd just like to share from a professional golfer's point of view what he thought. This only dropped this morning. Eddie Pepperell, who's reached a career best ranking of 32, also a co-host of the Chipping Forecast podcast. This is what he said this morning about his experience. The golf course on the Thursday was one of the best top 3 experiences I've ever had on a golf course.
Top 3 ever?
That's up there.
Wow. That's high praise.
Yeah. The conditions lent itself to having fun. The crowds were unbelievable. The whole atmosphere of the event felt like an open championship. It was just remarkable.
Yeah, that is incredible praise, isn't it? So Eddie is returning to the European Tour. Mm-hmm. He'd lost his card and he's regained it through qualifying. Great to see him down here. He's a real entertainer. And he has a huge social media following. So for him to be as effusive of that is another wonderful fill-up for the tournament itself.
Yep, absolutely brilliant. There was a lot up for grabs. Obviously, the Stonehaven Cup, 1 Masters invite for the winner, and 3 places at the Open at Royal Birkdale. So the composite course at Royal Melbourne, one of the best courses in the world, back 9 was going to deliver birdies and eagle opportunities on the final day in particular. The changing weather each day saw the course play differently. The field, I think, was the best in years. And also the feature group. Rory, Minwoo Lee and Adam Scott, they drew huge crowds on the Thursday and Friday. I felt like a lot of people came and got drawn in by Rory. The crowd was really golf knowledgeable. Sure, there were some people out there just to see and get a part of it, but it was a knowledgeable crowd that was applauding and appreciating the good stroke play.
A lot of great points there. The one thing that didn't really capture my understanding until you've mentioned it, and I know Sophie brought it up previously, was the fact that the back 9 played a lot easier than the front 9, which is almost like a trademark of the Masters tournament, isn't it? Where you see a lot of opportunities for birdies on the back 9 and some real volatile scoring. And that's exactly what we saw in this event. And I think that really added to the drama. Here's a couple of points I would make, and it doesn't need any more superlatives from me. It obviously has been an absolutely exceptional event. The previous 3 Australian Opens were mixed events, received sort of widespread criticism. I was actually a supporter of the mixed event. I could understand what they were trying to do. With limited resources, they were trying to pool their funds and run one very, very large tournament rather than have a whole host of people having to go to 2 separate events. When you've got volunteers and paid people, it becomes very, very expensive. So I understood it. But it did knock some shine off the men's event, and I can kind of get my head around that now. I thought there were some comments that were unfounded, that what they had done to the Australian Open, it was going to need many, many years to recover. And that's been completely demonstrably unfounded. I mean, it is back. In 12 months, this has put not just the Australian Open, but national opens in focus, I think, Wallace, and I'll be fascinated to see where we end up in 3 or 4 or 5 years' time. I think national opens will become a real focus of golfers and players, in particular, if like this, they are played on the absolute top-end tournaments that a country can boast. And I think what it's also done in such a short period of time is that it's shaded LIV Adelaide as the #1 professional golf tournament in Australia. Golf gets in its way sometimes with innovation and wanting to do this and wanting to do that. But if you have prestigious trophies, you play for them in traditional tournaments on great golf courses, that tends to be a very, very successful model. And that's the model that we saw here. And it's been incredible how quickly the Australian Open has been elevated to the point that I'm hearing American podcasts talking about that we should do away with the PGA Championship and make the Australian Open the 4th major. Don't know that we're quite there yet, but it is amazing what's happened to this event in 1 year.
100%. It's taken it to another level. The other thing that you'll recall is that our focus of being there was to focus on the South Australian people at the Open. So we caught up with players, greenkeepers, officials, coaches and fans. There were 7 South Aussies in the field, and for me, the highlight had to be Jack Buchanan's 7 under on Saturday. We watched some of that round, and it was just superlative. He looked so calm and so composed.
Yeah, a couple of points I'll make about Jack Buchanan. I just want to tie it into the winner, Rasmus Peterson, RNP, 26 years of age. He's on the PGA Tour next year. He's certain to return and defend his title, which is amazing. So that builds the field around the Australian Open to have another PGA Tour player on it. He's got there on the strength of a couple of runner-up finishes, one in Puerto Rico, one of the Qatar Masters, and he was a tie for third at the Tour Championship. Now, I just want to compare him and Jack Buchanan. His first year as a pro was early 2023. He had 3 wins on the European Challenger Tour that got him onto the DP World Tour, and in 1 year he goes to the PGA Tour and lands his first win. What an 18 months that is, right? But I want to compare that to Jack Buchanan. So RNP's 26, Butch is 23. His first year as a pro was late in 2023. So instead of early 2023 for RNP, he won twice on the Australasian Tour, and now he's going to the DP World Tour. I just feel like Jack Buchanan is in a very similar spot to where RNP was maybe 18 months ago. And then if I just sort of add on to that, I want to compare him to Elvis Smiley as well. Elvis Smiley is the lead player out of the 2021 class. That was when he first turned pro. Buchanan turned pro 2 years later, and I think Jack sort of leads that next wave. So that's what's really exciting for me is, yes, low round of the day on the Saturday was amazing, and overall he's had a sensational tournament. But I think for him now, he is absolutely established as the next Australian guy to go to the next level. He just compares really favourably to those guys that I've talked about who've already taken that step in recent years, and I'm just particularly excited to see where he goes from here because he's got the DP World Tour card. It's all in front of him, and you only need to have a couple of really solid results, maybe a win, and suddenly you're on the PGA Tour next year, and Jack's ready to take that next step. I think he proved that over the course of the weekend.
Ben, what was your assessment of Cam Smith?
Yeah, geez, it was wonderful to see such a solid return. I mean, there's an old saying, isn't there, about form being temporary and class being forever, and was true class from Cam Smith on show. So he's gone within, a couple of inches of making that putt, of getting into a playoff to win the National Open at the Royal Melbourne Composite Course. And you just think about what he has done at really top-class courses in major events. And when I say major events, I'm not just talking about the majors. I'm talking about absolutely high-end, top-class golf events around the globe. So he's won the Open at St Andrews. He's won the Players on the Stadium course at TPC Sawgrass. He's second here at the Australian Open on the composite course. He's had a tie for second at the Masters. He's had a tied for ninth on Oak Hill, one of the great American venues for a PGA championship. And twice he's been fourth at the US Open, once at Chambers Bay, long time ago now. That was when Jordan Spieth won it after, talk about 3 putts. Dustin Johnson had a 3-putt from 10 feet on that final hole at Chambers Bay. And he also had a tied for fourth at LA Country Club. So Cam is renowned for producing his best in big events on wonderful golf courses. And so it was great to see that continue for him. So look, it was a little bit sad to see him miss, by his standards, a pretty short putt, 5-6 feet. I would probably argue that 75% of the time he makes that putt, but that also means that 25-30% of the time he misses a putt of that length, and that's golf, that they don't always go in from that length. If I had one criticism of Cam and the way he played that last hole, is that he really wet the bed on approach. He was on the right side of the fairway, so had to play a little bit away from that pin. And with everything going on around him, where both of those guys had missed right, Siwoo Kim in the bunker and RMP on Dunk Island, the possibility that he could have played that away to 20-25 feet left of the pin would have been a really smart, good play. Instead, he finishes 50-60 feet left and long, and he just bailed out a little bit too far. And that was, I think, the mistake he made. Not missing the second putt, but it was just where he put his approach in the first place. So that's just something you've got to deal with in golf. The point I'd make about it, and we might wheel back to this, Wallace, but if that was an American course and he hit it there, that ball only goes 25, 30 feet away because it bounces 30 feet and it just splats and goes dead still. And the fact that you've got this wonderful hard golf course with those greens where it almost bounces like it's on a billiard table and rolls out another 20, 35 feet. That was the difference in that tournament. You had to be so precise with where you placed your irons because the way the ball released. So that was the beauty of the tournament, and that's what Cam got wrong in that moment. The other thing I'd have to say about Cam Smith, I'm disappointed that he didn't face the media afterwards. He was actually a bit chippy on Saturday night, Wallace. He talked about shutting up critics as his motivation. And look, those critics have really only been stating the obvious. He hasn't been playing particularly well for the last 18 months. So I just reckon to subsequently sook it and avoid the media was a little bit unbecoming. Having said all of that, it is just great to see Cam Smith back in contention at really important tournaments. He was doing it routinely up until the middle of 2023, and now we've seen it back here at the end of 2025, and it's long overdue, and it's wonderful to see.
And he shot 3 rounds in the 60s.
Exactly, and for the disappointment of his 3-putt on 18, his up and down on 17, that putt he made, that was just ice cold. So, yeah, look, I know he'll be disappointed not to win. To win your national championship on the number one course in the country would have been something really special, and he'll be ruining the fact that he fell short. But I just hope over time he just thinks back through it and says, well, I got my game going in a really important tournament. I've made myself relevant again, and hopefully he can just build from that. And obviously he'll have the Live Tour next year, but he gets into all the majors still on the strength of his 2022 Open Championship title. And I'd love to see him contend for majors once again after missing the cut in all 4 this year.
Focus of our trip to Melbourne was to observe what the South Australian lads were doing. How did you see it?
It was a great week for South Australia, Wallace. Let's go through them individually. Wade Ormsby, given a special invite. It's always interesting special invites, isn't it? Because you think to yourself, is there someone who deserves to be in there on merit over and above the guy who got the special invite? Wade is someone who can potentially win a tournament like this, and he earned his place with the way he played. Yes, he went slightly colder over the weekend, but overall, it was a fantastic week for him. What was he, T12 at the end of the day on Friday? So we know that Thursday and Friday, the course played very, very differently, different winds, different conditions, and to handle both of those and to be in and around the top 10 at the halfway point of this tournament was exceptional. So massive tick for Wade. Absolutely earned that special invite. And yeah, just hope he can continue to get starts into 2026. He's obviously was a startup with Liv, and lost his spot there when the Punch GC team became the Ripper GC team, and he's had a little bit of trouble getting a lot of starts, but hopefully people will see that he deserves invites into tournaments because he's not just a one-trick pony. He can absolutely contest, and he certainly did contest again over last week.
Stephen Leaney?
Yeah, look, I think it's his last professional event, and what a way to go out. Absolutely stood up. Goes out on a real high, really pleased for him, had his son on the bag. It would have meant a lot to him to not just make the cut, but really be in and around the tournament. Yeah, a little bit disappointing over the weekend as well. But for Stephen Leaney to finish by playing on the weekend and giving himself a real sight, I just thought it was exceptional for someone who's had such a wonderful career in Australia and beyond. If that is the last event that he does play, big round of applause to Stephen Leaney for what he's done for Australian golf.
How about Adam Bland?
Adam Bland has been awesome this summer. Not his best week, but for a guy who was essentially part-time a year ago, it looks like he's found a second wind. I'm excited to see what he can continue to do on the Australasian tour in what you would probably regard as the twilight of his career. But he really feels like he's found another vein of form, and hopefully he continues to play and compete professionally.
And Jack Carter?
Jack Carter, look, he had a poor Friday after a fine Thursday in the most brutal of conditions, so maybe a little bit disappointing for him, but a lot to like in his game. He was a late starter to professional golf, so I'd like to think that he's still got a lot of reps left in him. Another one of those guys that just needs to break through and win 1 or 2 times on the Australasian Tour, and he can get some opportunities beyond. So I'm certainly not putting a line through Jack Carter's name by any stretch.
Lockie Barker and Jack Thompson missed the cut by 1.
Right on the bubble there, weren't they? absolutely no disgrace there. You make one putt that you missed, and you think about over the course of 36 holes, the difference between making and missing one putt is just an infinitesimally small margin. So, yep, both of those guys. Jack Thompson, obviously, on the Asian Tour. Lockie Barker still struggling to break free from the Australasian Tour. I really feel like Lockie Barker is right there. Yeah, look, whether you miss or make a cut probably isn't going to make much of a difference to your career, but he just needs to have 4 good rounds. His best is so good, Wallace. I'm excited for him. And Jack Thompson, well, yeah, I mean, his best, what did he, well, we were talking about him on Thursday or Friday, weren't we? This is after the PGA Championship where he shot 65, I reckon, on the second day. Yeah, again, both of those guys, their best is so good. And if they can just string it together for a week or 2 weeks, over the course of a year and get themselves some exemptions into some bigger events, I reckon they won't look back.
Ben, Sophie and I were on the ground. What was it like watching it on TV?
Yeah, it was very good, Wallace. There are a few things as a TV broadcast package overall they probably need to improve upon. If I start with the commentary first, I thought that was first class. So the commentary team, there was a number of people involved, and they were all made their mark, I thought. But in particular, Ian Baker Finch, is the elder statesman of the broadcast, was superb. He's a familiar voice in world golf, and it's great that he comes back and does the Australian Open. He worked alongside Ali Whitaker. Ali Whitaker is the lead commentator, knows the DP World Tour inside out, and as an Australian really has an innate understanding of this event. I thought they played their roles perfectly. Ian Baker Finch, is the elder statesman, didn't try and become the know-it-all. Ali Whitaker, he gave Ali Whitaker the space to be able to deliver the information that, whether you're a rare golf watcher or someone who watches it routinely, I felt like you got something out of. So I think they were superb together. And Ewan Porter, he's an interesting story, Ewan Porter, but I thought his on-the-ground work was really, really good. He has an innate capacity to understand where the ball's going before it lands exactly where he tells you it's going to land, and I think that's quite a skill. Ewan, I think, plays his role really well as well. He doesn't try and over Ali Whitaker. He is trying to complement what she's offering. He's giving the sight from on the ground without trying to be an overarching commentator. So I think the commentary panel is excellent. The broadcast itself, they need to do something about the quality of television camera and television camera operator. So I don't quite understand which network off the top of my head was engaged by Nine and Fox to do the broadcast production, but whoever it was underwhelming to me. I think there were too many times when camera operators couldn't find the ball, and I felt there was a real lack of technology of what was going on. I thought the production overall was a bit clunky. So that is something that would need to be improved upon significantly, I think, if it's going to really make inroads as a world-class tournament and compare with what you see at the Masters and at the other majors that supposedly we're supposed to be being compared to. So commentators, big tick. The TV coverage itself and the production of it, yeah, probably maybe 4 out of 10.
Ben, it was a terrific event. What else can it do to improve?
Yeah, good question, Wallace. And there's a number of things that I think are in its wheelhouse right now. Firstly, it needs to demand its own week. So this is now running up against the Nedbank Challenge and the Hero Challenge. And both of those events kind of cannibalise even the strength of field of the Australian Open. I've got an argument. If your golf tournament ends in the word challenge, can we just blow it up right now and just eviscerate it from the face of the earth? The Nedbank Challenge I can deal with, but the fact that the DP World Tour puts both of these events on at the same time is madness. And the Hero Challenge is the most uninteresting, unnecessary golf event that maybe goes around over the course of the year. Found some genuine humour, Wallace, in the fact that Tiger Woods is at the Hero World Challenge talking about the possibility of scarcity of events, of the PGA Tour contracting down its events from 46, some good, some average, into maybe 20, 25 really good quality events. And I can understand that in isolation. But to do that while you're talking up the Hero World Challenge in the Bahamas for 20 people just before an American Christmas is a bit of a hit and giggle. I mean, come on, Tiger. Even you must have been, talking out the side of your mouth when you were trying to make that argument. So, yeah, could we just cancel the Hero World Challenge. I understand it's, nice world rankings points for a lot of those players and a nice way to spend a couple of weeks in the Bahamas around Christmas. But that event just does not belong anywhere on the calendar. So point number one, it needs its own week. I mentioned about the TV broadcast. And then the other thing I would probably try and do is fit into the American prime time slot a little bit more effectively. So what am I saying there? On Friday night and Saturday night in the US is our Saturday and Sunday coverage, and it finishes around about 2 a.m. on the East Coast. What if you said, well, we're going to try and get both of the Saturday and the Sunday play finished by 3:30, 4 o'clock Melbourne time, and have that finish around about midnight into the US. So they have college football that goes on now. It's conference time in college football. That's very, very popular on TV. Imagine if you could get to the end of a college game and then flick over and you're on the back nine of the Australian Open. I think that would make some real sense to me as well. So probably a couple of things I would think about there. You know what else, Wallace? I do feel like it's amazing when you consider where this event could have been when Liv emerged, 4 years ago now. There was a lot of talk that they were going to try and take over national opens. And a national open like the Australian Open was absolutely ripe for the picking because it had been run by a tournament management group. Golf Australia had taken it over. It was largely making a loss. The women were making an even bigger loss because they had a link with the LPGA Tour. Liv could have taken that over for not much, and instead they decided to go to their disruptor 54-hole with their teams, closed shop type events. And you just think where Liv could have been now if they had have gone, let's do Australian Open plus South African Open plus Korean Open plus Japan Open, taken all of these significant events around countries. Yes, had their big pool of players that come and played them, but incorporate the locals. We could have had some, they could have had some amazing events and been a lot more of a genuine threat to world golf than they are now. Instead, they're going to 4 rounds of 72 holes next year. The format outside of that won't change much, and they're going to be PGA Tour light, and I think they'll still struggle for any real cut-through as a result.
Next year, we're at Rory's favourite course in the SANDBELT, Kingston Heath.
Yes. Gee, that was popular amongst the Royal Melbourne people, wasn't it? I mean, you and I are Royal Adelaide, right? Imagine if someone turned up for a professional tournament at Royal Adelaide and said, I like Kooyonga better. We would have been outraged. I was listening to that press conference and I could kind of understand what he was trying to say, that just in his opinion, Kingston Heath was a superior course to Royal Melbourne. I mean, I disagree with that, but at the same time, I understand that there are people who think Kooyonga is better than Royal Adelaide, and that's just their own personal opinion, and that's all part of this. It's all very, very subjective, and I can understand that that's what people think from time to time, and I'm okay with it. Hey, one more point, Wallace. I'll just run this by you. Last year, when it was a mixed event and it was very, very heavily criticised, it was won by an American called Riggs Johnson at 18 under. That was played at Kingston Heath. The runner-up score was 15 under par, and 51 players finished the tournament under par. And everyone was saying, it was too soft. They had a lot of rain. Cameron Smith actually led that charge of being outraged that it was set up for the women and not the men. I'm just interested that this year, so 15 under was the runner-up score last year. This year, 14 under was the runner-up score. And that's only because Cam Smith 3-putted the last. 50 players finished under par, almost identical in the way the scoring finished up. If you take the runner-up as a nice little way of measuring it, because Riggs Johnson at 18 under was absolutely lights out last year. A quarter of a shot per round over the 4 days. Everyone bagging Kingston Heath last year, not one person bagging Royal Melbourne this year when the scores were, borderline identical. Now, score to par, I know, can be a bit of a sketchy thing, but score to par shouldn't be something that we get too worked up about, right? I mean, if conditions prevail that allow good scoring to happen, then good scoring is going to happen. We've just got to accept that. But the other thing I've got to say about this, and I've probably got to concede this point, Wallace, I'm pretty comfortable now if the Crown Australian Open stays on the SANDBELT for the next 4 or 5 years and really allows itself to bed in as this premier golfing tournament globally. Don't think it's ever going to be a major. I don't like that argument, but I do feel like it can be one of the top 10 events around the world each year, so long as it allows to develop its identity on the Melbourne SANDBELT, with maybe a potential to come to a place like Royal Adelaide or the new Royal Sydney or New South Wales in future. But it needs to be based around that Melbourne SANDBELT. I think we need to accept that that's where it needs to live for the short to midterm future.
And I think that's the intention of the Victorian government and Golf Australia, that they're showcasing the area where there are so many good courses.
One other thing it needs to do, avoid becoming a PGA Tour event. Because I tell you, two things will happen. And I was probably on the verge of making this point before. When RNP put it on Dunk's Island, or Dunk's Peninsula, or Isthmus as it is now, he would have had a wonderful, lush, green, even, symmetrical piece of rough to play out from. And when Cameron Smith played his approach into the middle of the green, that just would have splattered and stopped and probably spun back towards the flag as much as anything, instead of releasing and shooting back to the back edge of the green. So please, for the love of God, whatever we do with this tournament, can we not let the PGA Tour and the way they set up golf courses touch it? Because then it would just become like every single one of the PGA Tour events, that just a cookie cutter looking exactly the same as the one we saw the week before.
Hookie, just one before we go. Rasmus moved from 82 to 51 with this win at the Australian Open. What does that tell us? Does that say that this tournament's becoming more important?
Yeah, Wallace, 31 places in the OWGR is a big jump. The OWGR uses a dynamic rating now, so probably as much as anything, the fact that Rory McIlroy, the number 2 player in the world, that sort of is a rising tide that lifts all boats. Because what essentially they do, they conglomerate everyone in the field, they determine where they are in the OWGR and what they've achieved in the ratings period, which is the previous 2 years. And then that spits out, there's an algorithm that spits out what the strength of field actually is. Take Rory McIlroy out of the Australian Open field, and I suspect that Rasmus probably only ends up at 60 in the world or something like that. So that's a very, very basic, banal explanation of how it's calculated. But it does mean a lot for Rasmus, because it means he probably now gets in, unless he has a terrible start to 2026, he probably gets in all 4 majors now. So he's automatically in the Open, he's automatically in the Masters, but I think it's top 60 in the world for the US Open. So he's inside that at the moment. And I reckon it's top 100 in the world for the PGA Championship. So I'm almost certain that he'll play all 4 majors next year. And that's exactly what we talk about with a guy like Jack Buchanan. You only have to win on the right time to lift your ranking up and also get exemptions into tournaments, and suddenly you're away. Rasmus Nygaard-Petersen is away. He's going to be a wonderful player on the PGA Tour. He's long and he's got a very crafty short game. It's the right recipe. I'm excited to see, he's jumped 32 points this week. I wonder where he is when he defends next year.
Hookie, fantastic insight. Thanks so much for that. And we look forward to the cricket show that's coming up this week, in that we'll have Sophie back. And you've got a special guest for us.
Yeah, we'll be catching up with Jamie Pinelli, old adversary of mine. Used to get me out a heck of a lot, Wallace, when Adelaide or Glenelg played Kensington as the 2 clubs I played for. He's in Kensington's all-time greatest ever team. He now coaches their women's team. They've won the last 4 premierships. He's on the board of the South Australian Cricket Association. But the reason why we've got him on is because he was captain of the over-40s Australian team that won the World Cup last week. Beat Pakistan in the final. He took a hat-trick in the semi-final, did Panners. So we will relive his World Cup victory with the Australian over-40s team. That's going to be a wonderful chat.
That sounds great. Thanks for your time, Hookie.
Good on you, mate. Yep, looking forward to it. So it'll be Sophie and me back talking cricket on Thursday night. We'll review the second test. Look forward to the third test. It's going to be an amazing week in Adelaide next week, isn't it?
My word. Cheers, mate.